Gonna do it. Alrighty, I am live. We're gonna do it live. Hi, everybody. Here is your Thursday poll question. Look, this is one of those days where there was no choice. There was just no choice. It had to be this or some version of this. Should Jimmy Kimmel, should Jimbo Kimbo, should Jimmy Kimmel, for those of you Howard fans, have been suspended for comments made regarding the assassination of Charlie Kirk? The answer to that is no, he should not have been suspended for all the reasons we discussed yesterday. But I'll explain in just a moment. Thank you to my friends at Parx Casino. What a great mingling opportunity this Saturday will be at Parx Casino. It's the Pennsylvania horse racing biggest day of the year. Parx Racing and the Pennsylvania Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association present the 2025 Bet Parx Pennsylvania Derby and Cotillion. It's this Saturday, all day live horse racing. And by the way, two different $1 million races at Parx Casino in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Two races where the purse for each is $1 million for the race. 2025 Bet Parx Pennsylvania Derby and Cotillion Day. Free family fun, pony rides, string bands, face painters, live music, all free in the Parx Racing Picnic Grove, plus free Bet Parx PA Derby souvenir hats while the supplies last. Sounds like a fun day. Go mingle with your family at Parx and watch the horse racing. You've got to be 18 to wager at Parx Racing and 21 to gamble at Parx Casino. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. First thing I want to say is thanks to those of you who watched last night live what I'm regarding as episode 1 of the Mingle Project on YouTube. By all accounts, a huge success. Episode 1 was titled Restoring Common Experience, and I am here to break news and tell you there will be an episode 2, and hopefully an episode 3 and 4 and 5. So everybody seems to think it was really worthwhile and valuable, especially in this climate. And if you haven't watched, please watch on my YouTube channel, episode 1 of the Mingle Project. Yesterday and today's poll questions, yesterday's question and today's poll question are directly connected. Yesterday, we had 34,101 votes cast on this. It was a quote, and it was agree or disagree. Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, gross speech, evil speech, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. 71.11% agreed with that quote. And I kind of buried the lead, and I did it deliberately when I discussed it here yesterday, and certainly when I posted it at Smerconish.com and in the newsletter. I never said whose quote it was. It was a quote from Charlie Kirk. I didn't want it to be a referendum on Charlie Kirk, given that his memory now is the subject of such a polarizing debate. Everybody, I hope, agreeing how god-awful it was for his life to have been ended the way that it was. But people are now, and I think, after several days, I think it's appropriate to parse things that he said and evaluate exactly what his legacy ought to be. I know that increasingly I've released the valve on the stories that I'm publishing in Smerconish.com. I have one today from The Advocate. I think it's entirely fair to be examining his words as we look to Sunday, when the President of the United States and the Vice President and probably all the cabinet are going to be there in Arizona, memorializing his horrific death. But who knew that yesterday's poll question and that Kirk comment would have such relevance today? What caused me to raise it, I'm looking, as a matter of fact, at page 1 of Tuesday's New York Times. White House threatens crackdown on far left. And what precipitated that story and many others in part was Pam Bondi, because on Monday she did a podcast interview with Katie Miller, the wife of Stephen Miller. He'll also be a speaker at the memorial service on Sunday. And she suggested, Pam Bondi did, that there would be limits on anti-Kirk speech after his killing. Quote, there's free speech and there's hate speech, and there's no place, especially now after what happened to Charlie in our society, for hate speech. Miller followed up by asking Bondi if she would like to see more enforcement going on after the groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people. And the AG said, "We will absolutely target you, go after you. If you are targeting anyone with hate speech, that's across the aisle." I'll not repeat it here, but I explained yesterday that hate speech is protected, except in certain circumstances. And after the Pam Bondi comments, then you had President Trump, interestingly, with Jonathan Karl of ABC. And he said, President Trump said to Jonathan Karl, "We'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate." So I explained yesterday the Brandenburg decision. Brandenburg was a 1969 Supreme Court case. The government can punish speech as incitement only if it's directed toward and likely to produce, here are the key words, imminent lawless action. So all of this is swirling around us, and then come the events of yesterday. Then come the events of yesterday, and the Times coverage lays this out. ABC announced on Wednesday evening that it was pulling Jimmy Kimmel's late night show indefinitely after conservatives accused the longtime host of inaccurately describing the politics of the man who was accused of fatally shooting right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. The abrupt decision by the network, which is owned by the Walt Disney Company, came hours after the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Brandon Carr, assailed Mr. Kimmel and suggested that his regulatory agency might take action against ABC because of remarks the host made on the Monday telecast. What is it that Jimmy Kimmel actually said? I'll play it on air today so that you can hear the words of what he actually said. In the show's opening monologue 3 days ago, the 15th, Kimmel said supporters of President Trump were, quote, desperately trying to characterize Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old charged in Kirk's murder, as anything other than one of them. And then he said this: "We hit some new lows over the weekend, with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was a grieving on Friday. The White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism, but on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this." And then they cut to President Trump. He's on the South Lawn, and a journalist asks a question, like in the scrum, "How are you holding up?" And the president says, "I'm holding up, pretty well. And by the way, we're expanding the construction over here of the ballroom," which drew laughs from Kimmel's live audience. Kimmel then says the president is at the fourth stage of grief. Construction, demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish. And there was more to it. So, look, the First Amendment protects almost all speech, even if it's ugly, even if it's gross, even if it's evil. Exceptions being obscenity in certain circumstances, defamation, incitement to imminent lawless action. That is the Brandenburg case. And what seems pretty clear here is that Brandon Carr's comments set off a chain reaction that led the affiliates and then ABC to cancel Jimmy Kimmel. Would that have happened without Brandon Carr saying what he said on the podcast? We'll never know, but unlikely. Unlikely. And so it sure seems heavy-handed by the government through the FCC chair to get the media outlets, and there have been a number of these instances, to kowtow to the politics of the White House. No, Jimmy Kimmel should not have been suspended. Whether he's ultimately canceled or not renewed a la Colbert, we don't know. But this is a no-brainer. And I'm loath to put poll questions up that are going to command a 90-10 result or an 80-20 result. But I had no choice in this case, because this is the question of the day, and this is what everybody is buzzing about. This is what everybody is buzzing about. I have to say, Mark Halpern doesn't, offer a completely contrarian view, but in his newsletter today, he will make you think if you're a subscriber in terms of just how to interpret all of this. Let me just see if I can give you one take from Halpern. He says, meanwhile, the backlash has real breadth. WGA, AFM, Gavin Newsom, Ben Stiller, ACLU, and more on the way, including the comedian class, which will rally perhaps more strongly than it did over Colbert. Their complaint is straightforward. A comedian is out because politics collided with television. But now listen to this, because this is Mark making you think. But that complaint elides a second reality. For years, broadcast networks shoved a one-sided cultural sermon into living rooms and told the other half of the country to smile through it. ABC ran 2 daily hours, The View and Kimmel, that treated Trump with unrelieved hostility and insultingly treated Trump voters as a punchline. If you're looking for reasons tens of millions migrated to the former president's camp, that steady contempt is perhaps as good an exhibit A as you will find. Well, why did I say that Donald Trump won the election? He won the election because of my acronym to remember what I said in the aftermath and still believe is ICE. But I'm not talking border enforcement. Well, actually, I am, because the I is for immigration, the E is for the economy, and the C is for condescension. And that's what Mark is saying. That's what Mark is saying, the condescension. Now, having heard Mark's argument, okay, I get it. I agree that condescension is in large part responsible for Donald Trump's election, but that doesn't make it just for Jimmy Kimmel to have been suspended in this case. I get it, but that's not enough. My answer is no to the poll question, and I assume virtually everybody else's answer is going to be the same. Virtually everybody else's answer is going to be the same. Okay, thank you for being here. Subscribe, please, to my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like and subscribe if you're so inclined. Please set yourself up for notifications. And most importantly today, on YouTube, and it doesn't have to be today, but at some point soon. I mean, it's an hour of content. Last night, episode 1 of the Mingle Project on YouTube is an hour long. There are 4 great guests. Richard Louv, who wrote Last Child in the Woods. Jim Vandehei, who's the co-founder and CEO of Axios. Gretchen Carlson, whose work you remember from Fox and now has become such a champion, Lift Every Voice. And also Todd Bernstein, the founder of the King Day of Service in Philadelphia. They were all fabulous. I'm really proud of the content, and I hope you'll go watch. Okay. See you on radio.